Here we go. Hey there, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. We're going to, David, behind the scenes here, I am going to deactivate the waiting room. And that way, when whoever comes in is just going to be automatically joined into the meeting. So nobody gets stranded over there. Hey, Rebanto is in the house. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here. So this is, if you came to our previous adventure with naturalist David Lukas, you already know what we're going to be doing here. And Ray Bonto gives it a big thumbs up. If you're new to this, here's the deal. David Lukas, at least right there, at least on my screen here, David Lukas is is an amazing naturalist, one of the best naturalists I have met in my life. Hanging out with him in the field is always an eye-opening experience. His knowledge of natural history is encyclopedic. His love of nature has no bottom to it, no top to it. And his joyful exploration of natural history. Hey, everybody, let's wait till this COVID thing blows over. Then you want to take a live workshop with David Lukas. If he ever starts leading those again, and I recommend you do, David, it's just so much fun to be with you in the field. So instead of being with you in the field, what we're going to do is he's now also a videographer and photographer. And what we're going to do is go on a virtual nature walk with David. He's going to be sharing some images and pictures that moved and inspired him of natural things near him. We're going to use these to study and observe from, open up a discussion about the natural history of things. So we're going to be sketch noting along with it. We're going to learn some neat things about natural history. I might pop in here and there to show you kind of a drawing trick on some aspect of something. But the things that are kind of taking front seat here are the natural phenomena. And so it's if you are in the middle of a city somewhere, difficult to get to nature, this is also your virtual nature adventure. We're going to do something a little bit different than the regular workshops because there is no tight agenda. You are currently all able to unmute yourselves if you'd like to unmute yourself. And at any point you've got a question, a comment, a thought, or would like to share something that's going on in your journal, I want to encourage you to speak up, to share, and we can make this a conversation. Dear friends, David Lukas.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming out. What a pleasure. And we had so much fun last time. We wanted to continue this conversation, continue exploring more places. And I just love the idea of sharing virtual nature walks with people from the area where I live. And especially if you're in a city or it's hard to get out to some of these places, it's a great experience for just seeing some of the neat natural world. And so I've been out collecting images and videos to share with you. I've been posting some on YouTube as 10-minute naturescapes. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you. This is share. Can you see that now?
It has started screen sharing. There we see the map. Yes.
So I have started making these 10-minute naturescapes on YouTube. So a chance to kind of see some of these natural scenes for a longer period of time, to give you 10 minutes to sketch, journal, I picked the most beautiful places that I see, the most beautiful, interesting natural phenomenon that I experience, and I put them on YouTube as 10-minute long videos. But today we're going to be looking at just images and kind of doing like a little virtual nature walk with some observations, some discussion about journaling. And let me just start. Some of you were with me last time, so I just wanted to emphasize I am in northern Washington, up here on the Canadian border. You can see that going across the top. And I am in this vast mountain region here, the North Cascades, in this little tiny finger of a valley here that cuts deep into the heart of 2 million acres. this is basically what the landscape looks like around me. And I'm in a little valley in this region, pretty incredible. And as I was talking about last time, we have just the harshest winters, pretty extreme up here. And then we were at the point in the slideshow, our virtual nature walk, where spring was just starting to happen, and we ran into 1 hour right there, just when the beautiful pictures were going to start. So we decided to start up again this week and continue with the flowers and some of the birds and insects I put together to share with you.
David, David, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. There's a little bit of a problem with your audio. It's coming through a little bit broken and gravelly. Perhaps positioning the microphone a little bit closer. If there is an external microphone.
There isn't.
There isn't.
So I can just sit close to the computer. That work? That help at all?
Well, I hope it does. We'll find out. Go for it.
Whoa, that's not good.
Look at
let me know if you're getting more of
those. Are those pollen grains that I'm seeing on?
Yes, you're seeing beautiful yellow pollen grains. This is Spring Beauty. It's one of the very first flowers to come up, and look how beautiful this is. And so first thing up in the spring, and beautiful. So let's call it Spring Beauty. It is the same group as miner's lettuce, if you know that common plant which people can eat, in the purslane family. Can
you eat the Spring Beauty?
Yes, that is a great question. So yes, you can eat it, and it's an important food source. And here's why. So this plant starts growing under the snow when there's still snow on the ground. And it grows through the winter, pushes up only about 1 inch, but it begins to form all of its structures underneath the snow. And then when the snow melts, it is ready to go. That's why it's one of the very first flowers to be out. So in order to fuel all of that growth underneath the snow, it has a lot of energy stored in its bulb underground. And this bulb underground is rich in vitamin C and in vitamin A. It tastes like potatoes. It's a tiny little thing, but the native people harvested it in vast numbers, and the native people ate it a lot. So it was really important first food item in the spring to come up. And here's where it gets really interesting, is that they did studies in Yellowstone National Park, and this little tiny flower, this is only a few inches high, and its little tiny bulb is the #1 food of grizzly bears.
Whoa, whoa.
Isn't that amazing?
Hold the phone.
Yeah. This little tiny bulb, the bears just dig them up in vast numbers and fill up on them when they come out of hibernation, and they're so hungry and they need all of that stored energy. So this little plant wants all that stored energy for its growth underneath the snow, but humans and animals need to eat it too. So isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is crazy. Do you think that is just in sort of early spring, or?
Well, the bulb would be there all the time, of course.
Yeah.
And when it has the most food is, I don't know. I would imagine that by the time the flower comes up, the bulb is depleted of energy, but by the time it has leaves and begins to go through germination, it's putting a lot more food into its bulb again in preparation for the whole long summer, the whole long winter. So maybe early summer might be the peak time to harvest these for the bears when they come out of hibernation. I don't know what time they're eating them. But I love the idea that this tiny little flower is the most important food for both native peoples and bears. And they absolutely carpet the forest floor. There's spots where it's like white on the ground, like covered in snow. It's so beautiful in these flowers. So look at this amazing little flower. You can see, like you mentioned, the anthers with the pollen, 5 of them here, 1 for each of the 5 petals, and then the female part right up here in the middle. And then this beautiful yellow ring, which would just fluoresce in the UV spectrum to attract pollinators. These leading lines guiding pollinators, like come into the flower, come into the flower. Here is the bullseye right here. This is where we want to go. And these flowers are both in white forms and in pink forms, and the different color morphs attract different pollinators, which is interesting.
So then, I like how you sort of describe that from the insect's point of view here, with that, that pointing out those nectar guides and those.
Now they all radiate in towards the center, and then the highlight the center is this gorgeous yellow bullseye right here. This is where you want to come, little pollinator. Right?
Wouldn't it be amazing to look at this stuff in UV?
Yeah, it would be beautiful to have that capacity, like little UV binoculars we go out in the field with.
Yeah, like the bumblebee cam. Hey, I want to experiment with something. I want to see if for a moment if I can display a screen while you are simultaneously showing this. Right? Can I try something?
Yes, please. Yeah, I want to see what this is. What this is.
All right. Let me see here. And no, I'm not gonna be able to. I was gonna thought I was gonna be able to while this was up, be able to show a little drawing trick alongside this.
But you're a co-host, can't you? You could take over the screen sharing, couldn't you? Or would that mess things up?
Well, then we wouldn't be able to see your screen.
Yeah, it'd be neat if we could do a split screen.
So I'll look into that. For the short term here, should we? Do you want me just to pop on and share that?
Yeah, please. I think it would add a lot.
All right. So I am going to share this screen. I'm just going to kind of go by memory of what I was seeing there. That's a beautiful flower.
It really is.
So I'm not looking at the flower right now, but while it was up, I took a couple of notes. So you see, I've used my blue pencil. Let's focus that better. Boom, boom, boom.
It's fairly clear. Oh,
there we go.
Yeah.
So what I noticed is that David's taken a photograph of it from a slightly foreshortened angle, so that this side is closer to you than this side up here. And because the flower is slightly cone shaped, that means that the flowers are not on a totally flat plane. This petal that is coming down towards you, you're seeing it as shorter because it is at an angle that is foreshortened towards you. When you get out to these back petals here, they are, instead of being turned up towards you, actually, I'm going to use this Post-it note here as just an example. Here's the two-petaled flower, right? So imagine this is a flower with two petals. And the center of it is right here. So this is one petal coming down towards you. Here's another petal that is pointing away from you, right? So you notice when I kind of rock it like this, oops, how do I orient that? There we go. When I rock it like this, you see how that bottom petal is foreshortened and the top one is, you see the full shape of that petal. So on this flower, you want to note that on this petal that's coming towards you, also the two sides of it are curled up. So it is shorter. And you also kind of on the front edge of it, you get this sort of strange effect where these two little sides are kind of wrapped up like that. But on the ones that are further away from you, you're seeing the full size of those petals. And did they have 3 nectar guides in them? I don't really remember the position of those nectar guides. So just something to look for. It's nice when you're drawing from a photograph, a lot of this weird foreshortening, it's recorded for you on a 2-dimensional surface. So this is studying things from photographs is a great way to sort of get your brain to start to sort of handle these sort of foreshortening challenges. More complicated when you're looking at the live plant in front of you, but it's a really useful thing. So he's drawn it from this nice, he's photographed it from this nice 3/4 view angle. And so that's the little drawing trick that I wanted to share right there. Let's jump back to your screen.
We'll compare that to the drawing then. So you can do that, right? Or do I? No?
Oh, you do that. So you go to share screen on the bottom of your screen.
Yep. Okay. Let's see, screen maybe here. There we go. Is that back?
It's back.
All right. Yeah. Look at those petals curled up. Exactly.
And that's the smaller size of it. So that's how you kind of can capture this, that.
Nice.
Once you spot it, you go like, oh, of course, I see that. But it'd be really easy for our brains to draw that petal in the same size as the others because we know that they're symmetrical.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And while you're drawing, one other cool fact I learned about these flowers that I never knew before, and this is a common strategy, but these flowers have eliosomes too. Eliosomes are little food packets attached to the seeds. So let's see. You still there, Jack?
Yeah.
Okay, your visual turned into white, but so eliosomes, ELIASOME, is a little highly nutritious food packet attached to each little seed, and these seeds and these food packets are harvested by ants because the little food packet, the eliosome, is very rich in proteins and essential nutrients that the ants need to feed their larvae. The adult ants don't need it, but the larvae need it in order to grow up. So the ants harvest every seed they can find, take it to their nest, take off the little eliosome fat packet, feed it to their babies, and then dump the seed in their compost heap inside the nest, basically planting it underground in a fertilized site. It's a brilliant strategy. And any seed that doesn't get collected by an ant and stays on the ground was going to get eaten by mice and destroyed. So the seeds want to be harvested by ants and taken underground. It's just an amazing way of ensuring that your seeds are buried underground and planted in exchange for a little investment of energy. Really neat strategy. And I did not know that these little tiny spring beauties did that until I did some research.
That's delicious. Oh man. See,
It's so cool.
that's next level stuff.
So I'll go ahead and continue on so we don't get stuck too much here. Is that okay?
Sure.
Give people 10 seconds or something here to, I mean, I could stare at this flower all day. It's so beautiful. But as spring progresses, we get, let's see. Okay. And you can see in this photograph how the ground is still brown, just a few early shoots coming up. And among the earliest flowers to come up is two more plants, the yellow bells and the blue bells that are also growing out of bulbs that store energy so they can survive through the winter and then come up early when they're the first plants up. And look at this beautiful, this is this yellow one here, the yellow bells is a lily. It has these beautiful long linear leaves. They look kind of succulent. I'm not sure why they're so thick and succulent. It comes up and it's only flowering for a couple weeks, and the rest of the year it's dormant underground. So in a matter of weeks, it's got to collect all of its sunlight energy and pack it into a bulb so it can make it through the whole rest of the year.
Is this one of those ones that for the first few years, it just sends up little vegetative parts until it gets enough energy? Or is this one of the ones that, or does this one collect enough energy in its first
season?
Yep.
There is so little information on this when you research it that I'm not able to answer that question. There are not good write-ups about this species. It's the scientific name is Fritillaria pudica, Fritillaria pudica, and fritillary is from a Latin word meaning dice box because the seed capsules for this look like little dice shakers in the early Roman culture. So it's named after the dice boxes, the boxes they would hold dice in for playing games, because the seed pods have that really interesting, sort of a three-parted structure. They're really interesting seeds. I don't have a picture of one. I mean, not seed, but the seed capsule. And then pudica, the second part of the name, means bashful, because look at this flower. Look how it hangs upside down. Now, if the purpose of the flower is to attract pollinators, it seems like it's a disadvantage to hang upside down and be bashful, because then pollinators can't get inside your flower very easily. So this is something that wants to attract strong visitors. And same with the bluebells back here. They're hanging upside down also, the same tubular shape, but a different colored flower. And so I think that they're attracting bumblebees. And bumblebees, as you know, have those thick woolly coats on them, which enables them to be the first flying insects of the early spring when it's still really cold out. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I was out in a snowstorm and I saw two animals all day, and they were both bumblebees flying in heavy snow. So that shows you that bumblebees are able to generate heat and stay warm and fly on a cold day in early spring when nothing else is up yet. And then because they're able to be strong flyers, they can turn and come up underneath this flower, and they're very acrobatic, and they can grab onto these flower parts, shove their faces into this trumpet or the bell shape here, and reach the nectar. And in these yellow bells, they have grooves in the base of the petals on the inside that produce copious amounts of nectar. And so the bee has to force its face in all the way and get to the very base of each petal where the grooves producing copious amounts of nectar, and it gets its reward by spending the time hanging upside down in this flower and really working its face deep into the flower. In the meantime, it's getting covered in pollen and leaving pollen behind, taking it to the next flower.
That's really cool. And aren't bumblebees one of the insects that kind of messes with our sort of the simple definitions of who generates their own body heat? So that they are an insect that, like a mammal, can make their own body heat by flexing their flight muscles.
Yes, they can disengage the gear. So their internal structure in their body hooks to the base of the wing, and they're able to disentangle that gear or separate them, vibrate their flight muscles really fast without their wings moving, and use those contractions to generate heat. Yes, and then they can re-engage the muscle and the wing and take off in flight. So they're able to generate quite a bit of heat while they're sitting still. But then they have their warm, fuzzy coat too, you know? I was amazed to see them flying on a day when it was snowing in the mountains, flying around snowbanks when it was snowing heavily.
That's beautiful. That really
There weren't even birds out. There weren't even chipmunks out. The only thing that was out was two bumblebees an entire day of hiking in the mountains.
Now, were there any flowers out for them when you?
No, not where they were. This was up high.
Wonder what they're up to.
I don't know what they're up to. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't everywhere in the forest. I just walked out the trail. So there may be patches of flowers that they were finding somewhere. I wasn't seeing them. So.
Nice.
And another interesting thing is that, you know, they're growing in patches, right? When actually the bulb, I mentioned the bulb that's down here underground, they're putting a lot of energy into their bulb, but around their bulb are tiny little bulblets that come all around it, and it sort of make this dense nest of the bulb with all of its little bulblets. And the Native American word for or name for this plant refers to these little bulblets, they're like little rice grains all around it. They break off easily and they become clones of the parent. So it ends up growing sort of in a cluster. And after they get pollinated, these petals don't just drop off, which and then they'd be bare, right? But what they do instead is after they get pollinated, these petals turn a bright orange and then they turn a bright red, and they stay on the stem. And what they do is they add to the floral display. So the entire patch is still very, very colorful and is enticing to bees. But then when bees come, they can see the ones that haven't been pollinated because they're still yellow. So the ones that have already been pollinated still help out by adding color to the display. And I think that's really fascinating. they're contributing rather than just fading away and going to seed. As long as they can, they hold onto the petals, they just change colors. Isn't that a neat strategy?
So, it's not, you're saying that it's not to attract anything to them themselves, but that some of the ones that this might be sort of a kind of a kin selection sort of a thing going on, where the ones growing near you are probably related to you, and
Yes.
you want other things to still come to that patch.
Yep.
So you're still going to have attractive color, but you're still going to send a signal to the bees, don't come to this flower because it's already been pollinated.
Yes.
That is some next level flower.
And the more clearly you can mark the ones that haven't been pollinated, the more efficient the visit's going to be. It's going to show that every flower that hasn't been pollinated is going to get visited in the most efficient way. But you're still using the group color to bring in bees to check out all the flowers and visit the ones that haven't been. Wow, what a great strategy. Just love it.
Oh man.
So,
That's
but a beautiful flower to sketch, and move on here. So, but I also want to point out here, so we went from the snowy landscape, the snow is starting to match, you know, the snow is starting to melt, and you have patches of open ground, a few shoots coming up, and then almost overnight, bam, the landscape just transforms. And we talked about, so this green right here is a plant we talked about last week when we met. It was this one. Remember this beautiful lomatium? This,
Yeah.
and the incredible leaves starting to unfurl out of this amazing, I don't know what you call it, it's not a bulb because it's above ground, but these the leaves coming out, and then that turns into this. So this entire hillside of the bright green, this stuff in the foreground is just grasses and other herbs. But this green right here is all of that lomatium in a gigantic patch of it. That's what it turns into, and really colors the landscape. And just a little note about the area where I live. So here's the mountains I talked about in the background, the high mountains. And then around the valley is this shrub steppe habitat, which is a mix of sagebrush and bitterbrush and then lots of flowers. And then you can see the foothills in here, which are a mix of the open grasslands and shrub steppe with some forest, and then more forest, and then more forest, and then the high alpine peaks behind it. So you can see the gradation across the landscape here, with the trees in the foreground being ponderosa pine, and then up high it's going to be firs, Douglas fir, and starting getting the true firs. And then,
so as a photographer, what are you looking for in these sorts of shots, as you're kind of framing this sort of stuff? What kind of compositional rules of thumb do you use in your photography?
well, I'm trying to capture the juxtaposition of unique elements in the landscape. So the focus of this photo for me is this patch, which I did not realize that this lomatium did this. Very distinctive patch of green. I have other photographs of distant hills that are kind of greenish, but then brilliant green in the center because this is so distinctive. But this angle was even more interesting because I could show that green patch in the larger landscape context. So it tells a story of the landscape, not just of this unique patch of flowers, which is its own story. So that's the composition I'm looking for here. I wasn't looking for other kinds of leading lines and stuff like that. I was just trying to capture the context of interesting stories in the landscape.
Folks, notice those mountains in the background. What color are they? Isn't that interesting? That just sort of that pale blue haze over those distant mountains, slightly warmer down below. So if you were painting something like that, you would want to keep your values really, really light in the background there. And then as you kind of move closer to the foreground, you've got more warm colors coming in on that landscape. So notice, so as there's a mountain on the extreme far left hand, it's a slightly purplish color. So purple is a warmer color than the blues that you're seeing in the extreme background. So as you go further back, you're losing those sort of reddish purple color and getting more into those blues. And that's one other thing, in addition to those value changes with, again, lighter in the background, that's what we call atmospheric perspective. Keep the things in the background light. And that will give you a sense of depth. So if you are making a little sketch of what you see here, there's several clues to depth. One is those, David was mentioning those trees that are growing there. So those background hills, you see small trees, then you go further back, they're smaller, further back, they're even smaller, further back, you can't see individual trees. So there's the progression of size of those trees that will help you get a sense of depth. And then those value changes from very pale in the back to getting darker as you get forward. You'll see that really well if you squint at the screen, those value changes. And then there's the color as well.
So why does it drop out, Jack? Why do the colors drop out?
So humid air scatters light. And so that's why in desert environments, you sometimes get these really, really crisp, distant views, and the desert sort of flattens out. But if there's some humidity in the air, the blue wavelengths of light are the most easily scattered. And so there's a sort of blue haze that you're looking through, of blue scattered light.
Yeah.
And the warm wavelengths of light drop out as you go further through this through the purple haze to the blue haze.
That is so cool. I'm always struggling with that as a photographer, like, you know, because that's not the color of snow. Snow is not blue, it's going to be white. So I'm always trying to correct for that and make it white again.
There are these colors, which it is, your brain is actually accurately seeing that distant stuff is those distant hills and things actually are blue. So if you correct for that, it flattens out the landscape.
Oh yeah, it does. I've noticed that. It looks artificial.
Yeah.
So let me oops. So look at the landscape just starts popping and coming alive all around you. Here we have aspens starting to come out here. The white shrubs or service berries, also known as Saskatoon. But you can see the new leaves coming out on shrubs. The landscape just starts coming alive. And then almost overnight, bam, this happens. And this was an amazing part of living here. This is our first spring living here, and we just had no idea what we were in for. I mean, look at these displays that we were seeing around us. So this is early balsam root and silky lupin, just fields and fields and fields of it all around us. But there's times I could go on for 5.5 mile walks through this stuff. Just incredible to have this many flowers in this landscape. I went out one day for an entire day and I went like 1/4 mile because I spent so much time. I mean, how can you move fast through this stuff?
Yeah. How does it smell?
It's got a great smell because the lupins have a good smell. That's a great question. Balsam roots, the smell is kind of a musky kind of smell. It's not really sweet, but it is intoxicating. And of course, you got insects everywhere all around you. And I mean, with this landscape, Jack, we got to get you to come up and do a nature journaling workshop in this landscape.
You know, I think it would be easy to persuade us to come on up there and check this out. This is, but only if you will be our guide and co-explorer. Anybody want to go on a field trip with us in the Cascades?
Yeah.
We've got some information.
Oh, here, if you want to do some sketching we'll try some video. And so this is a Balsa remote close up, so you can see some of the details for some sketching. And rather than just looking at static photographs, we want to try a mix of video and photographs and see what you prefer. In the future, I can do more video or more photographs or continue doing a mix, but it's kind of neat to see the dynamic of this. I also have a video of this same sequence on my YouTube channel of 10-minute naturescapes with the soundtrack. You can hear all the birds singing around you. So for 10 minutes, you get to really immerse yourself in this landscape while you're sketching it or taking notes on it. And you can see in the out of focus background, look how this display just goes off on this hillside, down into the canyon and up onto the other hillside here. You can see the hint of the solid yellow in the back hillside here. This is incredible to be in this many flowers like this. I mean, I know California has wildflower displays, but here you have this with jagged snow-capped peaks behind you. So that's a great combo. And of course, these fields are full of singing birds, meadowlarks, lots of meadowlarks with their beautiful songs, and insects flying around everywhere.
So
This is like
for people who are sketching this, just notice the length, apparent lengths of those different petals in the foreground, in the background of that individual flower. And so it's
I picked this one for a sketching exercise because the petals are folded in a complex way. They're not flat outlines.
I like it.
There's a lot of shadow happening. I mean, look, you look at these over here on this left side, there's a different kind of light happening on them than over here on the right side, or one's in the back or one's in the front. So it seems like a good exercise to try. And
your brain wants to make all those petals the same length because you know that they are. If you let your brain make the bottom ones the shortest, then those bottom ones at 45, medium length, and then in the back, you get those full length ones tucked up around the outside edge of that disc flower. The disc flowers there. Do you want to tell people a little bit about you can see some of the stamens popping through those disc flowers in the middle. There's a wonderful story hiding in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the lighting's not great on it. And also this thing is moving around. So it's a little bit harder to, oh, a bee just flew through. A little bit harder to demonstrate that. But one of the things we love to point out on walks is that, first of all, this is a composite flower in the Compositae family. Sunflower. So each one of these petals is actually a complete flower. If you were to take a single petal and pull it off at the base, is a complete flower. Those are ray flowers. And then in the center, this beautiful dome of oranger flowers in the center are disc flowers, and they are also complete flowers. And it's hard to point all this out when it's moving around, but you can see the paler petals around the base of each of these tubes that comes up. And then coming out of each tube is there's
a ring of stamen, I guess, and then the pistil comes out as a little forked thing out the top. Is that right?
So you can see that here and a little bit here. It comes out and it forks, and the inner surface as it forks and opens up is sticky and receptive for pollen grains. So it comes up. This is the female receptive part. Pollinators are visiting the flower. It begins to open up and wants to receive pollen as visitors come to the flower. And this sticky surface is going to collect pollen grains. And if it doesn't get visited by a pollinator, it's going to open up more and more and more and more and start to curl back to expose a maximum amount of surface. So this one here, you can see the V shape. This is starting to split and open out. This one is opening up more, it's starting to curl back. I think you can see my cursor, right? It's a small cursor.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a little thrip running up the petal here. Oh, it just flew off. A little tiny insect just flew off. That was so cool. Microscopic thrip. So these pistils open up more, expose more and more sticky surface. And if no pollinator comes, it opens up and reaches down. Oh, I can't do it. It curls back and touches itself. It touches its own stalk. So this curl here is going to come out and continue curling and touch itself and pollinate itself if no pollinator comes. So it's
Did
a
you folks
great.
get that? I mean, so David just dropped some crazy on you. This is it's a beautiful thing to understand. So explain that one more time, because this is a stunning thing, and it's happening on every crazy little daisy that you've ever passed by.
Yes, look for these little curling pistils coming out. So they come up, they want to receive pollen from other visitors. They come up, they're protecting themselves, the two houses are protecting themselves. They open up and that inner surface is sticky to collect pollen grains. They want a pollinator to come. So they're hoping a pollinator comes. Every one of these little disc flowers is doing that right now. It's opening up and it's got that receptive surface. And if a pollinator comes, that's great. It's done. It starts going to seed. But if no pollinator comes, it's going to open up more and more and more surface. It's more hopeful. It's hoping someone comes and visits it. And if no one comes and visits it, it keeps reaching around and then touches its own base, which is its male part, and gives itself its own pollen, which is not great, but it allows it to go to seed and it comes back the next year as a replica, a clone of itself, and it tries over again. So maybe there's no pollinators because there's been a population crash, or it's terrible weather and the pollinators aren't flying and it's been raining a lot. So in case of a bad year, it can still have a backup strategy of pollinating itself, which is not advantageous, but at least it'll come back next year as a new plant and try again. And maybe next year there'll be a lot more pollinators. Brilliant strategy. And it's one reason why this whole family is so phenomenally successful. Major part of the biodiversity. There's daisies and sunflowers all over the landscape, many different genera. So great story, right, Jack?
So good, so good. And sort of explaining it forces us to do yoga
in your brain. In your imagination. Well, yeah, the hard part for us is like it opens up like this, but I can't bend my hands back to show how it curls back. Sometimes I go like this and try to demonstrate it like this, curling back, but yeah. There you go. Yep. And touch yourself. Yep. Well, in this little video clip, I love the energy of this whole field back here too. Isn't that great? Okay, so there you go. So you're touching your body, and your body is the male part with your own pollen. And here you have a whole field of it to see this example. You can find all stages of it as you're out here. So let's go ahead and look at a little bit more in the landscape, because we have all these flowers around us, but when you look up, you're just going to see incredible variety of things in this landscape. This is such a beautiful landscape. Like I mentioned, you know, California has beautiful flower fields too, but you don't have this behind them. So what an incredible mix of alpine peaks and flower fields in front of you. And you start looking around and there's amazing animals out there.
Yeah, just bounce back to that one more time. There we go. So folks, just sort of notice let's just talk for a moment. Foreground, background. In the background, what colors do you see? In the foreground, what colors do you see? Look at the warm colors, the reds, the yellows, the greens that you see are these light greens. And you're thinking, well, that's because that's the kind of plant that you're seeing. There's probably those same colors on the hillside that's across the way from you. But because it's gone through the blue filter, you're not seeing those warm reds. You're not seeing those yellows. Everything is sort of gone through a blue shift in the background. So just, you know, very simply, the simplest little landscape sketch here. I'm just going to hold something up to so that we, I guess people, is it possible? Can people see? No, they can't. I don't want to have you bounce out again, but just if you just make a little square and put reds and yellows into your foreground, and some bright lime green without even trying to be a landscape, right? Just on your little piece of paper, splash some of those colors together. And then on the other side of that little dividing line, just take some blues and blue greens and drop those into the back. It'll feel like, oh, this zone is close to you, that other zone is further away from you.
That is amazing. And this phenomenon, what a great naturalist tool too. I mean, I had never thought about that, but so bringing together the world of sketching and art and the eye of an artist to a landscape and a naturalist perspective, what a combination. I would never think about that, but yes, it's very clear here. It's like this image is divided in half with all the rich colors here and then the light blue all the way up here covering everything. Really strong forwards and background. So should I go on?
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to like show you some of the animals here too. I mean, look at this amazing, this is called a mountain bluebird defending its nest as we walk by. So here we are surrounded by fields and fields of flowers, and you almost forget to look at some of these incredible animals that are here too. And we love to point out in this bird on our nature walks, there is no blue in this bird. This is all what's called non-iridescent coloration. So we have iridescent coloration, which changes with angle, and non-iridescent coloration, which stays the same color no matter which angle the bird's going to turn. So for instance, the throat of a hummingbird is iridescent. So as it turns its head, you're going to see different hues of the color because it's iridescent. This is non-iridescent coloration. And in these birds, in bluebirds.
Just unpack for folks a little bit more about when you're saying there is no blue on the bird.
Yeah.
A little bit more about your meaning.
It's a structural color. It's called a structural color. So the structure of the feather tissue itself is what makes the color. It's not a pigment. So if you take a feather and grind it up, you don't end up with a pile of blue powder because there's no pigment in it at all. It's solely in the structure of the feather and how it reflects light back to your eye. So the keratin in the feather, which is the same material as your fingernail, is absorbing all of the parts of the wavelength except blue. And not only is it reflecting blue back to you, but it's actually amplifying the color. I mean, look at that color. That's not just blue. That is like intense shimmering color. It is amplifying the color. So it's actually modifying the color as it bounces it back to your eye. And it's all in the structure of in the feather. And that's why if you destroy the structure, there's no color at all. There's no true color. It's just a trick of the light being reflected back to your eye. And the quality of the male signals how good of a father this male is going to be. And the females will pick the ones with the best blue because those are the ones that are the most attentive males.
Whoa. Tell me a little bit more about that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's not always true in birds. I mean, there's other birds where the more intense colored males are the ones that are kind of like the flashy hunks that don't care about being fathers. But in bluebirds that they've researched, they found that the more attractive males with the better color quality, which is a sign of your nutrition and how good your health is, those are the males that are the best fathers. So those are the first ones that the females are going to choose. So they can see this difference really clearly. They can see how good the blue is in a male and pick the best males. And then structurally, a couple of things we can see are this is the bird of open country. So it's trying to see food items, insects, and some berries. Big eye. Look at the eye proportional to the face. It's a very big eye for seeing in wide open country. And then as opposed to other bluebirds, the western bluebird and eastern bluebird that live in shrubby areas or in forested, open forested areas, they have short wings because they sit on perches and look for food and then dive down and get it. But these mountain bluebirds live in open country where there's very few perches. So they have to spend a lot of time hovering in the air while looking around for food and then diving down to get it. And because they spend so much time hovering, they have longer wings. because they need to use their wings for flying. So structurally, this is a very subtle thing that you can see, is that these mountain bluebirds have quite a bit longer wingtips, whereas a western or eastern bluebird, it would end right about, say, right here. These have that extra length because they're open country birds that are spending a lot of their time hovering and creating an aerial perch. And while they're hovering in the air, they're looking around. Otherwise, what can they do? I mean, they can fly fast across the landscape, but you're not going to find food. Or you can sit on the ground and you're not going to see a lot because you're sitting on the ground and you're also vulnerable to predators. But if you're hovering, you can move quickly from place to place while looking down for food and then going to get it. And ideally, it takes a lot more energy to hover. It takes 4 to 8 times more energy to hover. You'd rather sit on a perch, but if you're in a place with not many perches, you will have to hover. And so that's why they have the longer wingtips. So that's a subtle structural thing to recognize this species versus a western or eastern bluebird.
Oh, that is fascinating.
Yeah, a neat little vignette here. This male sitting here watching us attentively defending its nest. And so I'll give you 10 seconds. I'll move on to another bird. I'll show you. How's that? These colors are so amazing, though.
It's fun to get to use that kind of saturation of blue.
Yeah.
How often do you get an excuse to play with that?
I know. I mean, it's so incredible. So let's see. So are we gonna end at 2? Because we got a couple of minutes. So I wanted to see if we want to have a discussion, open up for discussion or anything, or just be cautious of where we're going with this.
Why don't we open this up for a discussion? Again, people, you are unmuted. David and I have been chatting back and forth here. We'd like to invite more people into the conversation, comments, thoughts, ideas. Also, we'd love to hear people, any other comments about this format. Oh!
Yep. I didn't mean to click forward, but that's the next bird.
Just a tease there.
And a cool story too. This is a Western tanager, this gorgeous male. And while we were watching it, and I was trying to take a picture of it, damselflies, like the little dainty dragonflies, little damselflies, were hovering behind our heads for safety. And he came out and went right around our heads, grabbed the damselfly behind our head, right almost in our hair, and then flew back in front of us and landed and ate this damselfly. So it was using us as a foil to catch these dragonfly or damselflies. But no, Jack, you were just saying a really important question is I would love to learn what people think of this format. Any comments? Is it better to have videos, photographs? Do you like this format? Do you want more of this? You know, any kind of feedback would really help us shape this process of presenting this information.
People are liking the combo of video and stills. Does anybody want to, let's see, I am going to, let's see here. I want to see if, let's see if anybody wants to share some of their, the pages that they did. Tell me the region again we have.
The what? The region?
Yeah, what would we call this? This is
call it North Cascades, I guess. Yeah. North Cascades foothills.
North Cascades foothills. And sort of around what date was were these photographs taken? Or what month would you say?
These would have been late April.
And 2021. Yeah. Cool. Just added a little bit of metadata on my page. Oh, that's fun. Why don't we I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the gallery and see if there's anybody that would like to share some journal pages that they've done here with this from this adventure with Don Lucas. Ray Bonto, you are spotlighted. You are now live with David Lucas.
Wow.
Oh yeah, look at those foreshortened flowers. That dark that you put behind there really pops that up. And everybody look at the landscape there. Just having the blue in those back hills pops the green one forward. The warmer green comes forward. Then the blue in those back hills just recedes.
And then this was the other bunch. I forgot to color it black, but I can, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, nice.
Speed sketching on the, I like this, just sort of fast speed sketches on those birds there. But you really are getting the angles and values and colors. Ray Bonta, thank you for sharing that.
I have a question. For the sunflowers or sunflowers, why is it unhealthy for them to pollinate themselves?
Well, I think unhealthy is probably the wrong word. Just evolutionarily and genetically, it's disadvantageous because you're not able to respond to your environment and the changing environment. So I think you're just as healthy, but it's not a solution for the long term because you never get to evolve and adapt to the changes in the landscape. You want your healthiest individuals to survive and unhealthy ones to not survive, so that the population is constantly changing and responding to the environment. So, but they're the same every year, they never get to respond. So I think that's unhealthy is the wrong word. I'm using that loosely, I guess.
Yeah. And also, do you ever use a spotting scope? Like you only buy the body and fit your camera into it, or you use a phone adapter?
No, I don't, but they do exist. So I think they don't give you as good a quality if you're trying to take photographs or video. So for a quick snapshot, it would work great. But in general, I'm trying to get much higher quality. So it doesn't really work for that. Yeah, good question though. And I'm already carrying so much camera gear. Carrying a spotting scope is just way too heavy.
Yeah, thanks.
Ray Bonto, thank you for being on with David Lucas here.
Yes.
I'm going to bring on Brenda. Brenda, you can unmute yourself. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I've just done that. Thank you. Yeah, I have a question, David. We're just starting a nature journaling club through the library. I live in Santa Cruz. We're just going to start it this summer. And I have a question for you about which you prefer to do. You've done some which have been, you outside, stopping at the plants and describing things as you go. And then this one was nearly all pre-recorded.
Yes.
And you've put together the shots and things to make the story. Which do you find either the easiest or the most satisfying, or which way would you go if you were starting out and trying to do this?
I would start out pre-recording it, that's not the right answer. I would start out doing it where you're like doing your own voiceover in the field, because those are like a art piece that you can craft carefully, and you can change the voiceover, and you can record lots of little clips and take time putting it together. This is live, and it's scarier because something might go wrong, or you might say the wrong thing, or so I like the meditative pace of just being in the field with the camera and recording myself talking to the camera and doing multiple takes and trying different ways of expressing it and changing the lighting and different perspectives and ending up with like a dozen clips and then coming back and looking at which one's best and then putting it together and making kind of a carefully crafted, almost like an art piece but with video. So I like that better. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you. I'm not sure I have enough time to do that. It sounds really
It's
very
way more time consuming. I can do, I do like these little, I have a whole series on YouTube if you're interested. Maybe this is what you've seen.
I've seen
These
some,
little
yeah.
4-minute videos where I'm talking about the life history of flowers and stuff. That can take days to do those. It's so much work to get all those clips and put it together and make sure that it's seamless. It's a ton of work. Yeah. So this is much faster. These are just photographs, and then I put it in a PowerPoint presentation, and then we just talk about it. And that's a lot easier.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Good luck.
Is there anybody else that would like to ask a question or to share? I'll share my page here. So this was
Nice.
so I started. So you saw it started with that little spring beauty, and then was that yellow bells? Did you say?
Yellow bells, yes.
Then we get over here to the yellow bells. I'll just drop some yellow into that. There we go. There's my yellow bell.
You'll never forget now.
That's right. So yeah, just sort of dropping in some little kind of sketch note ideas. So you see there's the little, in terms of kind of sketch noting this. So here's the little bashful face. Here is the dice box, or the dice at least.
Yep.
Little landscape study. And then playing with those two things. So I find it so useful to just sort of add in anything that, like there's cool stuff that I'm hearing, like, oh wow, it's got longer wings for hovering. I'm going to put an underline under that long wings. This writing down the notes of things that I want to remember really helps my brain remember them. Then you see I'm also daisy chaining other ideas into this. You mentioned at one point, you said maybe 4 to 8 times more energy. So I wrote that, and I'm going to give that a lightning bolt. I think that's really interesting. So I'm also going to add a little exclamation point in there. So that, that just, when you kind of sketch note your thoughts and your ideas as something is kind of going along, that's going to help you be able to remember those sorts of things here. Remember when he was talking about the bulblets? There's a little sketch. I did it with dotted lines around the bulb and the boblets there because I really don't know how those look. That's just my thinking about the bulbs and the bulblets because I'm not really, I don't have data. So that was my page of sketchnoting with David Lukas. Hey, this has been really fun. Let's see if anybody else wants to share a journal page. If so, you can either raise your hand, unmute yourself. Anybody else comment or thought or question for David?
Yeah.
Shafal, thank you so much for being with us. You're now live with David Lukas.
Hi.
Oh, hold on, we are having a problem with your audio. It doesn't look like you are unmuted, but we're not hearing anything you're saying. It might be because of the headphones that you're using for audio. Maybe if you unplug that and then try to speak again.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Say again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I'm slightly nervous. This is my first time on any online forum ever. But I just wanted to say thank you. I discovered John with the International Week last week. And I saw this class and joined. So thank you so much. I'm very, very new. And I thought I would share what I'm doing, even though my hands are shaking a little bit. I started with what you were showing, trying to draw the flowers, and yeah, it's I'm an engineer by training, so all of the information that you were giving was very, very new. I just have this normal notebook that I use for work that I started doing this in, and then started to try some color. Notice the size of the trees that you're talking about. Yeah, and finally the birds. It's yeah, just
Wow.
really, really
I love all the notes you took. It's like you wrote down more than I said. It looks like.
Could be, yeah. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed this.
Wonderful.
Shefali, that is really wonderful to see those notes that you've put down there. Studying nature like this is a great biomimicry inspiration for designed and built things as well as in an engineered world. And so it's really, you can also look at this as an engineer from the point of view of, you're like, oh, that's a really crazy, that what a wonderful, nature's full of innovative solutions to difficult problems. Even just like, using somebody's head as a foil for catching damselflies. And thank you so much for sharing that page of observations. That's a wonderful, wonderful start and way to go on this.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
welcome. Thank you for joining us too.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this. I wanted to share one observation if we have time. It's because you said, right, that nature is a wonderful inspiration for design. Just 2 days ago, I was noticing, I don't know what they are, but these tiny caterpillar, like I'm in the Toronto area, so it's spring and there are these really tiny caterpillary things everywhere. And there was one hanging by a thread, I don't know if it's a thread or a web, from the roof, and it was really near the floor. And in a matter of 15 minutes, it just climbed up from the ground to the roof. And I have no idea how it attached itself to the roof in the first place. Did it come down and then go back up? But it was incredible because it was not very light. It must have been quite heavy, and then it covered that distance so fast. So how powerful it must be. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, like how powerful that thread must be, how much force it is able to bear. So that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to say about that. Want me to say something, Jack?
Go for it, David.
Yeah, I mean, that's so first of all, that silk thread is incredibly elastic, and God, I forget the numbers on spiders, but they can be like, the thread can be like 50 miles long before it would snap. Like that, it's incredible tensile strength. And but the caterpillars are using that as their escape mechanism. So as they're going along, they're probably always feeding out thread and then dabbing it to the substrate as they go. And then at any point, if a predator comes, they just launch themselves into space and free fall. And there's no way a predator can chase them when they do that, or it'd be very difficult to chase them. And then they free fall and they just hang in the midair. And then when it's safe again, then they crawl back up and start over again. So it's their escape mechanism. And then the thread keeps them from landing on the ground, because as soon as they land on the ground, then they're really vulnerable, because things like ants would just devour them and attack them and other predators. So they don't want to be on the ground, But if they're being attacked by a predator, they want to jump off of the branch that they're on or the surface they're on and be safe and then climb back up. The thing I always wonder about is what do they do with all that silk? If it climbed up in 15 minutes, it's not eating the silk. Where did the silk go? I mean, did you see that? I mean, that's a lot of silk for a little caterpillar.
There was no.
It's not like carrying it around in this big basket or anything, and it's not throwing it away because that's valuable protein. It needs to eat it and reuse the silk. So it's doing something, and there's a great question there to look at next time.
Something that I also just want to point out that David is doing is, so David has an encyclopedic knowledge of nature. When he doesn't know the answer to a question, he will always tell you. And also notice, just for everybody who's watching this, notice what he just did there, is he sort of played a little bit with an idea, and then he found like the next sort of thing that he doesn't know yet, right? And put some kind of highlighted that. That does two things. So one, for the rest of us, as people who are learning this, we kind of look at that like, oh wow, David doesn't know everything, and he's still actively learning these things. It inspires us to do the same thing. And also just sort of keeps it epistemologically honest. You know, he's never going to pretend that he knows something, and he sort of primes his brain then to go on and learn the next thing. You know, my hunch is like the next time I talk to him, he's going to find, you know, a couple of different journal articles about reingestion of silk by caterpillars or whatever it is. So it's also, David does a great job of sort of modeling habits of mind for all of us as scientists, as explorers, as people who stand in awe and wonder of nature.
And I have a question too. As an engineer, do you see nature? Does that affect how you see nature? Are you always looking at it through the mechanics of system processes and structure and form, and or could you do that?
Yeah, actually, yes. Not always though. Sometimes I've definitely done courses, especially in biomedical design. Where right now, like if you want to send things inside the body, the biomaterials you are designing, they are increasingly more and more inspired by natural things. So I don't do this actively, but it certainly features and it percolates in, and there are some engineers who pretty much do this all the time. So they're actively looking for natural materials or inspiration from nature to design.
Oh, what a great use of your training. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm delighted that you came on and joined us. I'm just so happy you found this community. So there's lots of really fun things going on in this larger community, and just it's a delight that you joined us today. This is great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here and learn more. Thanks.
Is there anybody else that has a question or comment for David Lukas? Perhaps this sort of brings this episode to a close then. David, are there any sort of last comments? Oh, actually, I've got something I want to share.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I'm going to go. So if people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, I'm going to put up a couple of websites. So this is, hold on a moment. So in the chat, I'm putting up the website for, this is Language Making Nature. If you love the way that sort of David Lukas was sort of pulling apart words and analyzing them, he actually invents and creates his own words as a naturalist, as a tool to help him connect more with that. And is Sierra Naturalist here? Let's see.
Lucas Guides, Lukas.
Lucas.
That in the chat. LucasGuides.com is the website. And then I'm making a lot of YouTube videos, including the ones for nature journalers specifically. So feel free to check those out. I'm making these 10-minute long ones for sketching and observing.
And I'm also putting in a link for to make a donation to support David. If anybody is able to do so, David Lucas makes his living as a naturalist and as a writer. And if it's possible to support him in this work, that is wonderful. If not, we encourage you, if you've got some financial hardships at this time, to consider just doing an act of kindness or stewardship in your own area that you otherwise might not have done. But if possible, to please give your support to David for the work that he's doing.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. What a pleasure to spend time with you and to share all these great observations. Thank you for sharing your sketches with us, too.
Thank you, folks. And look for more adventures with David Lucas on future workshops and programs. You can find those, we'll be able to find those on the Nature Journal Club community calendar. And we'll also be announcing those on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page.
Yep. And we're talking about taking next week off for the conference, but then doing one the following Monday, the 28th at noon.
We hope to see you all there. If you had fun, tell a friend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Tell your friends to come along for the next one, too. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.